Well, hello and welcome. Joe Gigante, regular Joe with you here on this Freedom Friday Eve. I know everyone else calls it a Thursday, but that just seems so boring. You can be a part of it as always, 888-737-1737. Going to go to the hotline here in just a moment. Want to quickly share 3 quick points. A moment ago, I played this sound from Courtney King, reporter at Fox 19 in Cincinnati, Ohio, talking about a local hospital that's denying heart transplant surgery to a 12-year-old because her parents have not had her vaccinated with the COVID jab. I mean, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water or to the hospitals. And I pointed out that if they're getting federal funding, they should lose every penny of it. But one other thing just to realize, at this stage in the game, even the FDA and other government bodies are admitting one of the number one side effects of the jab is heart problems. You have a 12-year-old that was born with a congenital heart problem and needs a transplant, and they want to make a requirement of her getting the transplant to take a medicine that is known to cause heart problems, long-term heart problems, even in young people. This is the insanity. This is what the upside-down world looks like. Now, 2 other good pieces of news. Robert F. Kennedy has been confirmed on a vote of 51-48. We don't have the breakdown. Someone didn't vote. Just do the math. But I said to you at the top of the hour that we knew they had the votes before they cast the votes. How do we know? Well, because if it came to a 50-50 vote, who breaks the tie? The vice president. The vice president's in Germany right now. They wouldn't have the vice president in Germany right now if he needed to be here to break the tie. So they knew they had which is good. They had the votes. And Kash Patel has been voted out of the committee to advance his nomination to a full vote in the United States Senate. Both pieces of good news as we continue to see Donald Trump put together his full cabinet. Now, just want to quickly get to our hotline. Joining me for the first time, certainly will not be the last time, Doug Truax. He is the founder and president of the Voter Reference Foundation, which is part of Restoration of America. Doug, welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Joe. Great to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
It is a pleasure. Now, you guys, you got a lot of irons in the fire with what you're doing. This particular work that you're doing with the Voter Reference Foundation is near and dear to my heart because the show is heard around the country, but I am headquartered in the great state of Wisconsin, which has been the nexus point for quite a few political battles, including this last election, where we were able to once again elect Donald Trump. And in so doing, though, we were once again reminded that our voter rolls have something like 8 million names on it, even though we don't have 8 million people in the state. And of those people we do have in the state, it's less than 3 million that can legally vote. Yet we have this, and this is a problem nationwide. You guys are trying to tackle that on election integrity. And one of the things I think is amazing is you're the only organization at this point that is putting all the state databases online, already 33 of them. So, I mean, you got more than half down, just a few more to go.
Yeah, that's right. And so this all came out of the 2020 election where we were all scratching our head. And some of us were more than that because it was infuriating. There was a lot had gone wrong, a lot to point your finger at and say, that doesn't seem right. And so it really came down to if we're going to, stay confident in our elections, you really have to have maximum transparency. And, most bad things that are going to be fraudulent or whatever else, the people that are doing it, they don't want people to watch. And that's funny.
Right, exactly.
What's going on with the Doge stuff right now, right? It's like, let's just put it out in the open, and people start freaking out. So, we just said, hey, let's start publishing the voter file. And because it's always been public information, it just kind of like this mindset had been creeping in. It's like, no, people's private information. Well, it's not everything. It's just like, did you vote? Who voted? Who's registered? Who did vote? And things like that. Obviously, no ballot. The ballots are always anonymous and all that stuff. So it's like, well, let's just put this out there, and then people can, look for themselves and say, does this seem right? Why is this person's 140 years old? I'm pretty sure they're probably dead. Why are they on here? Which does go to what you just said. It's like, if you have all these people on there that shouldn't be on there, then what's the deal? And then how easy is it then for people who have nefarious purposes to start cheating? And, we all start losing confidence, especially when races are close, which they are all the time. And so that was the goal, is to start publishing the voter file. And this is basically just the state data. We're not doing anything fancy. We're just making it easy to get to, because you want to buy a voter file in some states is very expensive. Like Alabama, to buy the voter file is like $33,000, and so it's not simple to get. And so we've been doing this, and we do buy that, by the way. So we spend a lot of money getting these voter files and putting them on voteref.com, which is where it all is, where you can go as a concerned citizen and just look and see what's on there. And that has been driving the train. A lot of people around the country that are heavy into voter integrity have been going in there, looking around, checking out their precinct and their county and things like that, and pushing for change, because it really does come down to the county election officials that have to be better at doing this. They have to be more competent. They have to be more into the transparency of this stuff, and the voter file has to be updated much more frequently, so we won't have these situations like we have in Wisconsin, where it's just like millions of people that probably shouldn't be on there.
Well, and the excuses they make, and I mean, we see this. This goes back to the ERIC organization, all these or things that have been going on, as you said, going back to 2020, something I've delved quite a bit into in the show, because, again, if we can't believe in our elections, we fundamentally lose our republic. I mean, this is our sacred obligation as citizens to choose our employees, our elected employees. And we've got to be able to go to the ballot and believe that when we're casting it, it matters, it counts. And as you said, after 2020, there were a lot of questions and a lot of valid questions. Part of the problem in trying to get to answers were the multiple layers of bureaucracy. As you said, they try to hide it. A mentor of mine was Paul Weyrich, the founder of the Heritage Foundation and Free Congress. And he used to, one of his favorite phrases was, he'd say, "Shine the light and watch the rats scatter." And that's a lot of what is going on,
right,
as you mentioned, with Doge, and even with what you're doing with this organization, because I think it really is important that people have that access. I want to just say it again for people. If you want to see the states that are done, it's voteref, REF.com. And then, of course, for the Voter Reference Foundation, the website is Voter Reference Foundation, all one word, .com, easy to find. Now, you came into this, you're not some lifelong political guy, right? Didn't run for 20 different offices and try to ascend your way. You actually are a West Point grad. You're a veteran of our United States Army, which I thank you for your service. And you got out of the Army and you went down the road of entrepreneurship. So at what point were you like, you know what, private sector life is just too boring. Let me jump head first into trying to solve politics, because that's easy. We can do that.
Yeah, right. Well, I got out of the military in '98, and then I went into corporate America for a little bit. But I am an entrepreneur, and thanks to God, I was successful, and it all worked out. And then in the process, living in Chicago, I said,
well, that explains a lot right there.
Right. So 23 years in Chicago. I live in Florida now, but 23 years in Chicago. But in back when Obama came in, I said, this is horrible. This is really going south. And so I said, what's the most impactful thing I could do? And that was run for U.S. Senate and hopefully beat Dick Durbin at the time back in 2014. Well, it didn't work out. And then I said, well, I don't want to just do nothing going forward. So I started Restoration PAC in January 2015. So that was the first thing I started. And that was back when super PACs were relatively new. Citizens United was only 5 years old at the time. And so, that's kind of blossomed. I'm pretty sure all your listeners have seen Restoration PAC ads over time. We had a lot this last cycle.
Yes.
We've run a lot. Yeah. And so that's the original organization. We have 7 organizations now. And so we got quite an operation. And then we've kind of turned into the outside group that helps coordinate the efforts of the other outside groups. Because you have, if you think back, like the scope of political history here, Soros got into this outside group thing in the early 90s, and that kind of grew, and Arabella turned into something, and they're always doing nefarious, nasty things, and so they kept it super secret. And so you always had like the Republican Party fighting out with the Democrat Party, which is always like kind of the mainstream thing we look at. But then the outside groups have grown. The left has been pretty far ahead of us because of Soros, but then over time, what was happening is there were more groups like us, and then I think it just kind of turned out to be I was the guy that helped. Hey, I don't get paid. I'm an outsider that doesn't get paid to do what I do. I've been fortunate to be blessed with business success, so I do this as a volunteer. And so I think a lot of the donors say, hey, well, this guy's in it for the right reasons, and so it started being a kind of a way to help the country through coordinating outside groups and holding them accountable in certain ways for the money we're giving them. And so we kind of turned into this kind of clearinghouse for outside groups. And that's kind of what we've been doing, too, in addition to all these other things. So, yeah, we've got a lot going on, but that's kind of the genesis. And we're, obviously we're heavily involved in Wisconsin, helping Brad Schimmel, the most important race in the country.
Yes, indeed. Well,
by far this
two
year.
congressional races involved to it. Yeah,
we're doing a lot. Yeah.
Now, you said a moment ago, by the way, I just want to make this clear for the listeners. You don't take a salary for what you do. You do it as a volunteer.
Right.
Now, just be warned, though. Jamie Raskin out of Maryland may want to impeach you then, because that's what he's saying he wants to do to Elon Musk. So he's also a volunteer. So I don't know how that works, by the way, constitutionally. But, I mean, it's Jamie Raskin, so we won't let laws or anything get in the way of that. No, so
that's right. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, that guy's bad.
he's just. I tell you, you've been doing this obviously for a couple of years now. As you look at this, I mean, I've been doing this. I've been in broadcast. We figured this out a few days ago. Coming up in September or October. I don't remember the actual date because it was a very long time ago. But I'll be 40 years in radio coming up in this fall. Now, full disclosure, I was 13 when I started, so I'm not as old as I sound.
That's right.
But yeah, no, I mean, but it's a true story. But I since the 90s, actually, when I went to work for Paul Weyrich, he founded something called NET, which was a precursor to Fox News, and it was meant to be the television cable news alternative to CNN, a conservative point of view. But that kind of began my trajectory into getting into conservatives' work and broadcasting and everything else. And so I've seen quite a bit. I'm a native of Washington, D.C. Like you, I escaped. I was there for 35 years, and then I escaped to the Midwest. One day I may follow you to Florida because these winters are pretty brutal. But nonetheless, I've seen a lot, and I'm sure you have. I have never seen the Democrats, frankly, so childish, and that's saying something, and really seeming so desperate. I mean, they're on this kind of spree where who can cuss out Donald Trump or Elon Musk the most. It's kind of jarring at one level to see this. I warn people, it doesn't mean we get to sit back, right? We have important races like the Brad Schimmel race in Wisconsin. There's other important races in other states around the country right now. But it's kind of an interesting situation where Trump has really put them back on their heels with the speed and focus that he's come in. And I imagine that's kind of, for all the work you've done, that's got to be pretty refreshing to see.
Oh, it's like I can't even begin to tell you. From we've all been through this, right? Watching it go downhill, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not going well. And then all up and we win, and the Democrats don't know what they're doing because they're bankrupt. They were always bankrupt. They were just being propped up by the liberal media. And we all had that feeling, and like all this political stuff that's out there about how USAID was giving them money and things like that. It starts to get clearer and clearer because we all knew, like I always said, it's still a center-right country. They just managed their way to whether it's through government unions or teachers unions, this kind of those are the original outside groups in a way. So we just had to get our act together. I think we spent way too many years on the conservative side saying, well, we'll run good ads and people will do the right thing. And, there's some truth in that for sure, but there's much more focus now, especially from our side and from what we do over here at Restoration America, on, look, we know who our people are. We got to get them out to vote. And I would say one thing real quick, too, just a quick aside for all your listeners in Wisconsin. I'm pretty certain that everybody listening right now in Wisconsin is going to go vote for Brad Schimmel, and that's great. But what you have to understand is if you know anybody that voted for the first time this last election for Trump, and that was their first time voting,
yes, get them out there.
You got to go grab them and tell them they got to go vote again right now because we have got to get ongoing engagement. And we can't just make it like, oh, we got to get this one thing done and then we're done. I mean, it certainly feels great right now, but to your point a second ago, we got to, keep our foot down on the gas and make sure that we take this thing back. And then, guys like us will be old and gray and we'll be like, hey, we pulled that off, but we still got a long ways to go, right?
Right. It was only the beginning. It was, November 5th was only the beginning, not the end. We've got less than a minute, and we'll have to get you back because there's so much to talk about. But for everyone that's hearing it, I mean, the mission statement, I love it. It talks about the two significant threats. It's the elite Marxist neoliberals internally, externally, communist China. I agree fully. How can people that are listening get involved? They can go to voterreferencefoundation.com to learn more, but what can they do, if you can, in 30 seconds, as we face these elections and as we move forward to engage and be a part of the effort?
Absolutely. So two things. They can do Restoration of America and get signed up, and obviously we'll get them all of our information and what we're doing in Wisconsin in particular, but all around the country, and people get involved every day because we're definitely a growing organization. And then the voteref.com piece is what you were referencing a second ago. That's the website where we have all the information, and people can literally go on there and pull down their precinct and basically see how many ballots were cast and how many people took a ballot, which is the main thing, right? It's like, and that's where the discrepancies are in these counties. It's like there's too many ballots based on how many people actually pulled a vote, pulled a ballot on that day. And so those are the types of things that people are really digging into, which we have to do as Americans to push the transparency and hold these people accountable in these election offices. And that's the key to the whole thing.
Doug Truax, I appreciate it. Good to have you on. We'll get you back soon. We've only just the tip of the iceberg on the great work you're doing. I appreciate it. We'll get all those links up so people can follow through on the offer. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
The Regular Joe Radio Show.